sounds like we're going to war.
Absolutely.
I'm not sure,
Our
It's a very
mistakes are over.
inspiring theme.
right? All right. So we are officially, this is our second ever episode of Learn from My Mistakes podcast. I'm excited to have you here, Brian, because I know you have made plenty of mistakes. I shouldn't say it like that though.
A few.
Wow.
But you have
What an
some
introduction.
history.
Yeah.
You have some history.
I'm still here. That's
He's like, don't talk about me like that. Okay, so just quick intro for myself, Marie Baginski here in Phoenix, Arizona. Been in real estate for 15 years already. A little bit of everything: short-term rentals, long-term rentals, fix and flips, wholesales. Jake, take it away.
I'm taking it as we speak. I Jake Remillard. I'm here in Fayetteville, North Carolina. I've been in real estate for coming up on a couple of years now. In that time, made some amazing connections, partnerships with people such as Marie. Done some flipping, got some rentals, get a pretty cool, fully outsourced wholesale business. So yeah, just making progress, making mistakes, learning from them, and then networking and having people like Brian Fine join our podcast here.
Yeah,
so
so Brian, why don't you give everybody a little intro on you before we actually ask you about your mistakes?
so I've been doing this since 2012. Been a full-time real estate investor. Uh, Lots of ups and downs along the way, but at the moment, we have about 500 rental units under management and growing pretty rapidly at that rate. So heading in the right direction. So overall, very, very pleased with it. In sense that we've done everything:
Yeah.
fix and flip, wholesale, short sale, short term, long term, you name it. We've done it all at this point. At least in the residential space, I have not stepped into like retail centers or things like that
Oh,
yet.
okay.
Yeah. So, just out of curiosity, on the rental side, how many of those do you own? Are you part owner in a lot of those?
I
Most of
own
those?
300 and some odd, 320 something of
Yeah.
those. So,
Nice.
Yeah. So, I'm sure you got some great tenant stories.
oh yeah, it's how long is this? This is you're gonna need more time if you want those. You should have warned me.
No. So, I do want to know. I mean, you've been doing this now for over 10 years, right? So, if you had one that you could choose, and I know it's going to be a hard choice, but what would you say was your biggest mistake in real estate or being an entrepreneur in business in general?
Being a house flipper.
Okay.
That was a wasted, well, not wasted. That's an incorrect way to say it. That was a very, very poor use of 7 years. We flipped a little over 100 houses, and let's do unicorn math for a second on that, and just pretend that I made money on all of them, which I didn't,
Right.
and that everything went perfect, and we'll just make $30,000 a pop on those. So times 100, I made $3 million. Yay! And then the IRS gets a chunk. That's about 50%. So I made 1.5, and I had a business partner. I made $750,000 in 7 years. Not bad, not great. Okay, it's more or less how it went,
Hmm.
with a lot more stress and hours than that, but that's how it went. If instead of selling those assets, I kept them, at this point they would have all appreciated approximately 50%, growing in value roughly $5 to $6 million. And they'd cash flow somewhere in the vicinity of $30,000 a month. So that was a rather catastrophic mistake from a wealth building perspective. I'd be
Yeah.
quite a bit further ahead had I not been stupid enough to sell them.
Yeah. And so do you think you would have, like, going back, you would have bird them out and refinanced and kept more of them? Did you need the cash at the time?
Yeah, it's honestly, I had a mindset at the time that I think is similar to what I encounter a lot with fix and flip investors today. They're just looking at that check, like, hey, why would I cash flow $200 a month for and deal with tenants when I could have a $50,000 check next week? You're a moron for doing this. And so that's kind of how I thought of it at the time. And even when you heard about these landlords, they were all older. They've been in this for 40 years. They had thousands of doors. They're making more money a month than I made in a year. It's like, well, yeah, sure, if I wanted to start that way. And then
Yeah.
even with the BRRRR method, it just didn't make as much sense to us at the time. I'd go back and beat myself silly for that. No,
Yeah.
moron. You want to keep every single one of them. Do not sell them.
Well,
Especially if
okay.
you lost money on.
So that's a good question. Now, do you think you would keep every single one of them, or would you kind of go back and forth, like have a mixed bag? I know when I started in real estate, my goal was like, okay, flip 2 and hold 1, flip 2 and hold 1.
Mhm. I would actually put them in entirely separate buckets. So more or less what we do today is we have the transactional side. I'll sell people assets and things like that. Those are in the I'm selling those side. There's no illusion that I'm keeping them. But for the stuff for ourselves, it's all keep.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it won't even make it through my underwriting.
Wow. That's amazing. So obviously that has changed. Do you think it's been your mindset that changed, or what was it that changed your point of view and had you switch from fix and flip to buy and hold?
Learning macroeconomics would be a really, really good start. To build real wealth, which I define as cash that's there over time and grows, rather than dealing with what we call the churn. So if I do a fix and flip or a wholesale, I market for the deal, I find the deal, I do the transaction, I collect the check, but now I'm done. I have to go perform more actions to get more. That's the churn. And so the active side of the real estate business is a very high churn business, very stressful, relatively expensive, not super high risk, not really, but very, very active. It's a high paying job. The wealth side is about holding, and that's defined by the IRS. Most of the people that call themselves real estate investors are not, from a tax point of view. When you flip a house, that's income.
Right.
You're an unlicensed broker. You're not a real estate investor. A real estate investor, by the IRS's definition, holds property for greater than 1 tax year, and that is a tax status. If we have
Right.
a way we file it, you need a K-1, or you're not a real estate investor. So that was part of it. Deep understanding of what inflation does to us was another, and then learning the financing side. And it just makes no sense. It makes so much more, just in a few short years, than you ever would as a flipper. And it just keeps coming. It's money while you sleep.
Yeah. Jake,
Oh.
I feel like I see the wheels turning in your head right now, and you're like, I'm kind of new. I'm focused on wholesaling and fix and flipping right now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that's why this podcast is so much fun for me, because there's like kind of contrasting experience here just between the two of us, right? So I'm still very in the mindset of like, I need to wholesale these properties. I need to just like get the cash flow there. I need to, flipping this property in Raleigh, North Carolina right now. And I'm just hyper focused on this big payout. And I've, more and more, I'm hearing kind of the same thing that you're saying, is just like all these people that wish they could just hold on to properties as they were, selling.
So you'll sell it. Let's use 2021, 2022 as an example year, or 2020, 2021 as example years.
Sure.
They're not a good sample, but they had a very, very high appreciation rate. So your net off of a wholesale is, you do a really good job, 10%, and then about right. That's a good one.
Yeah.
And then IRS gets their cut, so don't forget them. The great state of North Carolina gets their cut. Don't forget them. And then you'll probably have a local on top of that. So you're going to lose a third to 50% right off top. So you are netting maybe 5 to 7% on a wholesale deal. Same thing with your fix and flip. You underwrite it to whatever the hell you want, and then you're going to net 10 to 12 because that's what the number comes out when you're done. Well, if I just hold an asset from 2020 to 2021, it appreciated 15%.
Yeah.
I outperform it. When your tax event sucks, you're cutting huge checks to the government. To access equity, we do it 2 ways. Well, 3. 1, you can sell it. That's a tax event. That's what a house flipper does. 2, you can refinance it. That's debt. That's 0 tax. And 3rd, you can 1031 it, which means you'll pay it off if you ever feel like it, but we never will. will just die instead. So so holding them makes more wealth. You just have to wait a minute for the payday. The huge paydays are there. We take them as cash out refis.
Yep. Okay.
It doesn't look the same as a fix and flip payday, but then you still own the asset. So we're not done.
Right. Then you still have depreciation and other.
Yeah, I got all that fun stuff. And you can accelerate the depreciation, which is
Yep.
really fun. So if you hate paying taxes, why don't you reduce your taxable income to zero? And it's one of the largest deductions in the tax code. We should take advantage of it. And we only get it by holding property for at least one tax year.
Yep. I just did a cost segregation analysis on 2 of my rentals this year to do that with the depreciation, accelerated depreciation. And I'm like, thank you to offset some of that active income, right?
Exactly.
So Brian, tell us what did your team look like when you started out fixing and flipping, and what does your team look like now?
Great question.
Okay, so when I started out, it was my wife and I, and we had a business partner. Our business partner was a silent partner. His goal was to write checks and collect checks. He didn't want anything else.
Those
my
are the
wife,
best kind sometimes. No offense, Jake.
it had its ups and downs, though. There's lessons in that too. That only
Right.
works temporarily. My wife was in charge of all the project management. She was very, very good at that. One of our first lessons, we lost a lot of money on our first flip, is when it's time to fire a contractor, you need to fire the contractor, and you can do it fast.
Yeah.
Don't mess around. Oh, he just needs another chance. No, he needs to be gone, and you
Yeah.
need to go find somebody else. You don't have to be rude about it, but nope, the terms of this contract have been violated. We're done.
Right.
We screwed that up on the first one. My wife was very, very good at firing people for not doing their job. Really enjoyed that part. I handled the marketing and sales side. It's kind of like what I
Okay.
do today. I haven't overly changed that part. I do the front and the back. I'm the A to Z guy. Don't talk to me about any of the letters in between.
Gotcha.
So that was then. Today, my wife is actually a full-time mom. She gets to spend all her time with our kids.
Awesome.
I have 3 absolute genius business partners, and we're very well balanced. I do the sales. I have an acquisition partner. I have a networking partner, and I have a polymath partner. Handles all the money.
I was going to say polymath. You might have to explain that a little bit.
She is a CPA and one of the most brilliant people I've ever met.
Nice.
I look at a thing and I'm like, it looks like an okay deal to me. She's like, nope, we're going to make a fortune. Go buy it. Okay.
Yep.
And then it takes her 40 minutes to explain to me why it's a good deal because, I'm only.
She can see things you can't see.
Yeah, but once you see them, you can't unsee them.
That's awesome.
And then suddenly all this stuff like, oh, wow, nobody else is buying these because they don't know what they're doing. We're buying everything. Buy it all. 4
Okay.
walls, a roof, and a positive DSCR. Sounds great. Let's close.
Yeah. Well, and honestly, I feel like that is the trick, right? Like positive DSCR right now, that's key.
Well, you have to have it, or they're not going to write you a loan. So
Right. So aside from those business partners, so there's 4 of you that make up the core business partners. Do you have, virtual assistants, in-house assistants? How do you handle the property management side of things? 500 properties is a lot of properties.
It is, and there's a fun stories too. So we just went from 3 VAs down to 1 full time.
Okay.
So we just shifted that around. I have 15 maintenance guys.
Okay.
They're 1099s. They're hard to keep track of, but I've got a bunch of those, and I don't even know how many contractors beyond that. Lots of we run at least 4 crews at any given time for make readies.
Okay.
So relatively large construction side.
And are you focused all in the great state of Pennsylvania?
Yep, specifically in Western Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh is our choice market. That is the most affordable market on the planet with a population over 1 million.
Okay.
So we got that going for us.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely, even though I'm from the East Coast, I definitely did not spend a lot of time in Pittsburgh. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But I like the fact that you're niche and you're staying in that market. You're not really branching out or looking at other states right now, or
we were.
Okay.
We were I own property in 7 states. We only offer our turnkey services here in Pittsburgh, and at the moment, we're only buying here in Pittsburgh.
Okay.
That is a function of the economy. That's the
Gotcha.
that's the Fed. They've really messed things up for us, at least in the short term. They've slowed our
Okay.
growth, but they've also created an excellent opportunity for us to build a lot of wealth. So whether they're just doing it at the cost of your grandkids.
Yeah. All right. So tell us what was a big mistake with that first business partner that was a silent partner? Because you said there was some things to learn there. So what happened with that?
There was it's the inequality. So when we started out, I'm literally a broke college kid living in my mom's basement. I can't even make that up.
Okay.
That's where I was. I'm married too, so we lived in a couch and we had a bed.
Oh,
And
yes, nice.
Yeah, it was
Nice.
Romantic, cozy.
yeah, about I think we were about 120 square feet between two of us. It was sweet.
Nice.
What'd you guys do with all the space?
Lots of hooks on the walls to hang things.
It was not a great time. Um, so our partner was older, established, had some finances, was bankable, and was able to break us into this because otherwise, this stuff costs money, and that's not a thing that broke kids in their basement have. And at first, that was fine. It worked out very, very well. He made a ton of money on us. We made a ton of money. We learned a ton. But then you fast forward a couple of years and it becomes somebody taking 50% of your equity while you do all the work. And I look suddenly just as good on paper as they do. So
Right.
how long are you willing to hold that anchor at that point? And so on a long enough timeline, it will probably fail or at least breed some horrible resentment. So if you were going to do something like that today, I would suggest a 5-year sunset date in the operating agreement that all partners agree to. Just an automatic, unless we renegotiate, this ends in 5 years.
Yeah. I think you bring up a good point because, I've had some business partners where, it didn't go as well. There were just, like you said, kind of not equity and how much I felt like I was working versus they were working and what we were, our roles and responsibility. And I think our biggest mistake was just not having the end goal in mind. So I love that you're bringing that up. Like this ends in 5 years because, when you're first starting out, you're just so excited to have somebody that's going to like split the workload with you or give you the capital if that's what you're, needing or whatever it is. But you're not even thinking about 5 years, 10 years, 20 years from now. You're just thinking like, this is what I need today.
Yeah. If I could get a check for $20,000, all my problems would go away.
Yeah. No.
And then like 8 checks later, you're like, yeah, I'm not really sure I want to work for the next 20 grand like that. That was not worth it.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So all contracts should be negotiated for the divorce, not the honeymoon. And it makes life so much easier. You're setting a very clear expectation right up front. Nobody has any illusions. And should somebody violate the agreement, there's procedures for that. You just follow them. It makes life real simple. Since in my world we're buy and hold people, it's very easy. The only thing we require a majority to do is force a sale because that's the thing we don't do.
Okay.
Otherwise, we leave it simple.
So what does your relationship look like with partners now? So aside from the 4 in the company, you're doing the turnkey rentals, right? So if I was just to call you up and say, hey, Brian, I'm interested in a turnkey rental in Pittsburgh, what would that relationship look like between you and your partners in the company?
Yeah, so that would kick off a process. I'd send you over a quote. You'd say, okay, we are a brokerage. So you'd get our broker partner then would hook you up with a standard MLS contract. We'd connect you with financing, and then we'd turn you over to management.
Okay.
And so you'd be good to go. If you had a problem after that, you call me if you can't work it out, and we'll see what we can do about it. So we keep you going forward.
And I would be a part owner in that with your company and my company, or you're just doing the property management at that point?
You are the owner
Okay.
of the asset. Property management, that's a fun journey. We started out using third-party property management. It worked great until it didn't. About 125 units that I suddenly had a whole big problem with. They weren't being managed right, and so we had to switch it. And we did that by bringing it in-house. We had it in-house for the past 2 years, and in January of this year, we sent it back out to third parties again, multiple third parties.
Wow.
Got rid of it. So now we're asset managers. We oversee the property managers.
Gotcha.
So that is the current evolution, and I think it's probably the scalable final one. I believe, but we'll see.
Yeah.
I feel like there's some interesting stories and probably some mistakes there. So what was the issue with the original property management company that brought it in-house?
Management is a horrid business model. Absolutely terrible. Just look at it from the big picture, what it is. Most of the businesses we're in, everything we do in real estate is relationship based. It's fundamentally a win-win, right? The way property management's set up, it's a win-lose. The worse you do as an investor, the more the manager makes, and vice versa. It's also a ongoing service. So it can do extremely well, and then something changes and it won't. It fails, right? Personnel changes, whatever, and that's basically what we ran into. We had good personnel at our original management company. They were doing all right. Those personnel changed over, and I got a call one day from some young woman. It's like, okay, Mr. Fine, I'm going to talk to you about your properties. And she just starts going off on all this stuff. And I already knew we had a problem. We were basically looking at how we were going to solve it at that point. And I'm like, hold on a second. What was your name again? She tells me, and I don't remember it at this point. And I'm like, would you mind explaining your experience in real estate to me? And she's like, oh, yeah. So I was a manager at McDonald's, and I've been doing this for 3 weeks.
Nice.
Yeah.
And I said, you are not qualified to have this conversation with me. And she just got really offended by that. And I said, you need to have the owner call me. And she got all uppity and everything. And I'm like, do you have any idea what $30 million looks like? She's like, what? Do you know what $30 million looks like? No. Well, that's how much the value of the real estate portfolio you're trying to talk to me about is, moron. So put the owner on the phone. We're going to have an issue.
I love that.
So yeah, that didn't work out. We had to bring it in after that. But it was personnel, essentially. You have to keep competent people. And competent people want money.
Yeah.
People, A players don't work for scraps. It's not how this works. Well,
not the same fee as a manager at McDonald's is making.
Exactly. And the amount of capital thrown off as a property manager just doesn't hit it. So most of the personnel available that have to deal with all this stuff are not paid enough. Yeah. And as investors, we don't want to pay it because that lowers our bottom line. So it's this very antagonistic relationship right up front, and it causes a lot of issues long term. Okay. So that was our initial problem.
Yeah. So I'm curious then what happened when you brought it in house, because as Jake and I are working together right now, we are wholesaling some properties. We're also picking up some buy and holds. We're kind of trying to implement the buy and holds sooner rather than later. And we have a property manager locally, but it's just a couple units. But I think we were already looking at I don't know if the communication is there, right? Like, I don't know if this is going to be a good long-term solution. We feel like if we bring it in-house, we'll have more control, right? More control with the processes, procedures, obviously personnel. So what advice would you give us if we're going to bring property management in-house?
Don't.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just don't. You'll bring all your problems in-house forever.
Yeah.
Management is a bargain at twice the price. Yeah. If you're getting it for less than 20%, be thrilled to death and pay it all day long if it's being done right, because it's worth every penny. You will always be the bad guy. You'll have all the tenant horror stories. This will stop being fun. There's tons of liability. Basically, being a property manager is being regulated by both state law and real estate law all the time, and being hated for it because nobody likes those laws. So the tenants disagree with them all anyway and think it should be different. And so you will always be the villain. If you get to the point where you do what we do and there's turnkey services, well, then your investors ultimately buy off of you because they love and trust you. Which is, that's pretty important. They're my friends. I wouldn't have sold them junk. Well, they're going to be with you for years. And if it becomes an issue with their investment, whose fault is it? It'll
Mm.
always, always, always be your fault. You will never cease to be the bad guy. So I would not recommend it. It is an unprofitable business. I can tell you that right up front. So if you would like to only open businesses that make money, management is a terrible choice.
Okay.
Find another answer.
Okay.
Handle that.
And in finding the right property manager, what would you say are kind of the key things to look for?
That's actually really rough. It's reason being because the way we've solved it now has a lot to do with our size.
Right.
We are a really big account, so fucking me over is a very expensive proposition.
Yeah.
And so I get treated better than the average person at the same price because I'm worth too damn much.
Yeah.
Right.
If you're going to bring them like 5-10 units and expect the same treatment, you're smoking crack. That's not how this
Right.
works. You're just simply not a big enough client. It's going to be a challenge unless you can offer them ongoing growth. And I would identify somebody who is both experienced enough to handle what you have and ambitious enough to want the growth.
Yeah.
That would be a really, really big portion. Make sure leasing is very strong. Everybody gets caught up in the maintenance side. We're not as worried about that part because we're a big ass contractor.
Okay.
But you guys can do that too. You can be your own maintenance. That's not a big deal. You can handle that. But I would make sure that the leasing side is very, very strong, and how they deal with tenants, the tenant relationship piece is very strong. We need those people both paying rent and, more importantly, treating the asset well.
Yeah.
And that is a relationship game, not a numbers game.
Yeah. Awesome.
I think
Jake,
that's my favorite quote from the podcast so far is that like, fucking me over is an expensive proposition. That's got to go somewhere.
You
Like,
can totally do it. It just,
Yeah.
we're just never going to call you again.
Right,
Whatever.
right. Yeah, and I
when
think
we get the highlight reels, Jake, we'll make sure that that's in the highlight reel.
yeah, absolutely, that made the cut. No, I just think that that's coming, to us at a very kind of crucial time for us to hear that, because as we are starting to keep more of these properties, that's really something to kind of think about, and hopefully not make that same mistake of just assuming that we can take on the management, because when we're crunching the numbers, we can kick back an extra 10% that
No, you
really
can't.
doesn't exist, right?
Nope.
Yeah.
You're going to lose 20.
Yeah.
That's how it really works. It's insidious too. It's not actually easy math to do. It's not just your man hours. It's what happens when you do a shitty job with a tenant so they move out sooner. So now we have another turnover and make ready. So we've just enhanced that cost. To really calculate it, you'll need about a 5-year window, and you'll have to back calculate the whole cost.
Yeah.
And it gets very, very expensive. If you didn't you didn't do a good move-in procedure with them, the tenant doesn't know how to maintain the property correctly. So they let certain things go, and it gets more damaged. That ups your maintenance costs, right? Because they didn't know how to do that. They felt you should fix something, and you didn't have a good enough relationship with them that explaining that what they're asking you to fix is not happening. So they stop paying rent over that, and now you got to take them to court and do all that. Well, all those costs add up, and they're essentially a management problem.
Yeah.
And you're talking about bringing all of that in house. That probably
Yeah, it sounds like a headache we probably don't want.
It's not great. There are people out there with like severe mental illness who love property management, and you should hire them.
Severe mental illness.
Yeah.
I love it.
Just hire them. They think this is great.
Great.
Let them do it.
Awesome. Well, Brian, I just want to ask you, for our listeners, because we're already at 30 minutes. So how can people get in touch with you? What's the easiest way if they are looking for some turnkey properties in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania that are managed without them? How would they get in contact with you?
You can go to our website, coasttocoastturnkey.com, with the number 2.
Okay.
And that's there's a link on there. You can book a call with me, and we'll talk to you and see how we can set you up with some assets. You guys sort out. So it is a good time to buy, though it takes a little education to know why.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Right.
Awesome. Well, thank you for your time, Jake. Any last questions for Brian before we sign off?
No, I just thank you for dropping some knowledge bombs there and sharing some mistakes. I think it's something that more people I think should be open to doing. So just thanks for being open about it.
Yeah, sure. Anytime, guys. Have you back
Awesome.
someday.
Yes,
I
definitely
look
will.
forward to
Thank you
seeing your
so
next
much.
update, your next episodes too.
Yeah.
Awesome.
All right.
All right.
Bye, guys.
Later, guys.